What happens when a 24-year-old black woman in a hoodie sits in seat 2A of a first-class cabin, and the head flight attendant decides she doesn't belong there? What starts as a subtle humiliation spirals into a full-blown public confrontation at 35,000 feet, only to end in a shocking phone call that flips the power dynamic in front of an entire cabin. But this isn't just a story about a seat. It's about legacy, prejudice, and the price of underestimation. And for the airline, that seat becomes a $50 million mistake. Stay with us. The karma is coming, and it doesn't miss. The North Wing Polaris Lounge at LAX hummed with muted opulence. Crystal glassware clinked softly against polished wood, and low murmurs from business travelers filled the air with a sterile sophistication. Amid tailored suits and designer handbags, Amara Cole stood out, not because she tried to, but because she clearly didn't belong, at least in their eyes. She wore a gray hoodie pulled loosely over her braided hair, simple jeans and well-worn sneakers. No Louis Vuitton, no platinum status badge swinging from her lanyard. Just a small backpack and a leather portfolio clutched tight against her chest. She kept her head low, avoiding eye contact as she waited for her flight to be called. Flight 227, non-stop to New York. First class, seat 2A. A seat that, for her, was more than a luxury. It was a responsibility, one she hadn't asked for but could no longer avoid. Her father's death had changed everything. 6 weeks ago, Mason Cole, aerospace engineer, aviation innovator, and the quiet co-founder of Northwing Airlines, died of a sudden heart attack. While the world mourned a legend, Amara mourned a father. A man who had built an empire, but always came home in time to help with algebra homework. A man who rarely gave interviews, but never missed Sunday dinners. And now, the empire was hers. In his will, Mason had left Amara not just his personal estate, but his controlling shares in Northwing, along with a single instruction: make sure the skies stay just. Today was her first board meeting, her official induction. She hadn't even told her mother yet. The thought made her chest tighten. The hoodie wasn't a disguise, it was armor. Against the press, against the expectations, against the possibility that she'd mess it all up. The boarding announcement came. Flight 227. She stood, adjusted the backpack on her shoulder, and walked toward gate C12. The gate agent barely glanced at her boarding pass. First class, left down the jet bridge. Enjoy your flight. She stepped onto the plane and into the curated serenity of first class. Plush leather pods, chrome accents, ambient lighting. Everything screamed exclusivity. Good afternoon, said the flight attendant at the door. Tall, blonde, perfect posture. Her name tag read Karen. Amara offered a polite nod. Hi, seat 2A. Karen's smile faltered almost imperceptibly. Boarding pass, please. Amara handed it over without hesitation. Karen looked at the ticket, then back at Amara. A pause. Too long to be casual. A crease appeared between her brows. 2A, she repeated, as though the numbers were in a foreign language. Yes. Karen's lips pressed into a tight line. Follow me. Amara walked behind her, past rows of tailored passengers already settling in. The seat was beautiful. A full recline pod with a window view and a privacy divider. She reached up to place her backpack in the overhead bin. Excuse me, Karen interrupted, her tone shifting to sharp professionalism. I'm going to need to see that boarding pass again. Amara blinked. You just saw it. Karen extended a manicured hand. I need to verify something with the gate agent. There may be a seating issue. A few heads turned. Amara hesitated, then handed it over again. Karen scrutinized it like it was a fake ID at a nightclub. Cole, Amara, she said slowly, almost savoring the syllables. Booked last minute. The implication hung in the air like fog. You don't belong here. Amara felt a familiar heat rise behind her ears. She said nothing, but her shoulders stiffened. I'll just be a moment, Karen added, turning on her heel. As Amara stood awkwardly in the aisle, she caught sight of a businessman watching from across the cabin. Latino, late 30s, thoughtful expression. He gave a faint nod. Not of pity, but solidarity. When Karen returned, her voice was louder, intentionally public. "I've spoken to the gate. There's confusion on this seat. Please step aside while we sort this out." Amara didn't move. "My boarding pass is valid. I paid for this seat." Karen's expression chilled. "Ma'am, please don't make a scene. We can resolve this easily if you cooperate." The word scene landed like a slap. It wasn't about protocol. It was about control. Karen had decided this hoodie-wearing black girl was an anomaly that needed correction. Amara glanced at the passengers around her. Whispers, eyes, judgments. Not this time. She straightened, quietly pulled her phone from her pocket, and opened her contacts. She tapped the name, Gregory Ward, CEO, NWM. The silence in the first-class cabin was taut, like the stillness before a thunderclap. Amara Cole stood beside seat 2A, her phone glowing faintly in her hand, thumb hovering over the call button. But she didn't press it. Not yet. She looked at Karen. The flight attendant's carefully composed face had shifted into something smug, guarded. Her authority had been challenged, and she wasn't letting go without a show. "I'm going to have to ask you to step aside, ma'am," Karen said, her voice cool but louder than necessary. "We need to clarify your seating with the gate. Please wait by the galley." Amara stared at her. Unreadable. No protest. No indignation. Just a silent, deliberate inhale. Then, slowly, she picked up her backpack from the seat and walked the short distance back to the galley, the narrow passage between first class and the curtain separating coach. Behind her, the cabin watched in uncomfortable stillness. Karen turned toward the intercom panel to make another call, but she didn't see the eyes that followed Amara's every step, specifically the dark, nervous eyes of a young flight attendant named Maya. Maya had just stepped into the galley to prep service trays when she saw Amara's face. Recognition bloomed instantly. She had seen that face on a confidential internal memo 3 days earlier, a notice from corporate security alerting staff that the new confidential shareholder transition was in effect, and certain VIPs might be traveling under low-profile circumstances. The memo had no photos, only names. One of them was burned into her brain. Amara Cole. Maya's eyes widened, but she said nothing. Her lips parted as if to speak, then closed. She looked from Karen to Amara, then down at the tray of cutlery in her hands. Her silence weighed more than any scream. Across the aisle, Daniel Cruz, in seat 3B, adjusted his glasses and subtly tilted his phone to start recording. He had watched the entire interaction, the double-checking of the ticket, the passive-aggressive tone, the way the black girl in the hoodie was treated like a trespasser. This wasn't his first time seeing something like this, but this time, something about the young woman's poise, the way she didn't flinch, didn't apologize, made him open his camera. Not to post, just in case. Karen returned from the intercom and approached again, her heels clicking with authority. "Miss Cole," she said, emphasizing the name with a faint sneer. "We've confirmed that seat 2A is showing a duplicate entry. Another passenger is assigned to it. So, I'm going to need you to return to the gate. We can work this out from there." "I'm not leaving the aircraft," Amara replied, her tone level. "My boarding pass is valid. You scanned it. You saw it twice." "Yes, well," Karen said, flashing a tight-lipped smile to nearby passengers. "The system sometimes glitches, especially when people use rewards points or buddy passes." There it was, the implication, again. Amara wasn't a customer. She was a fluke, an accident. From the corner of her eye, Amara noticed Maya stiffen, her hands shaking as she arranged the silverware. Karen didn't notice. Karen never looked at subordinates when she was in control mode. "I'd like to speak with the captain," Amara said quietly. Karen blinked, thrown off for half a second. Then she recovered. "You can't just request." I'm requesting now," Karen's jaw clenched. Very well, but I'll warn you, he's extremely busy. Karen disappeared toward the cockpit. Back in coach, a murmur was beginning to spread. A couple in business casual leaned over the curtain, curious. A teenage girl peeked from the aisle. Everyone could feel it. The tension, the imbalance, the quiet violence of being publicly questioned. Daniel stopped recording and slid his phone into his jacket pocket. He leaned toward Amara slightly. "Are you okay?" She turned her head slightly, eyes still on the closed cockpit door. "I'm fine." He nodded. "She's out of line." "I know. You're handling it well." "I'm not here to perform." He smiled faintly. "Didn't say you were." Before she could respond, the cockpit door opened and Captain Mitchell Greene stepped out. Mid-50s, broad-shouldered, silver hair cropped close, 4 stripes on his shoulders. He looked like someone who once played linebacker in college and now collected watches. He approached slowly, glancing at the situation like a man walking into a room with exposed wires. "Good afternoon," he said. "I'm Captain Greene. I understand there's a seating issue." Amara gave a brief nod. "No issue. Your lead attendant doesn't believe I belong in 2A, Karen interjected. "Captain, I've followed protocol. There's a manifest conflict. I've shown her my boarding pass 3 times, Amara cut in. Each time, it scanned valid. Captain Greene looked between the 2 women. He sighed, already annoyed. "May I see it again, please?" Amara handed him the pass. He scanned it with a device clipped to his belt. Beep. The screen turned green. "Valid," he muttered. Karen stepped forward. "Yes, but the manifest also has a Mr. Johnston assigned to 2A. "Who is not here," Amara replied. The captain raised a hand. "Okay, let's not escalate. Miss Cole, would you be willing to sit in a different seat for takeoff? Just until we resolve this on the ground. We can make it up to you. Complimentary upgrade, bonus miles." "I don't need compensation," Amara said firmly. "I need my seat." Behind her, Daniel folded his arms, watching closely. The captain's eyes narrowed slightly. "Ma'am, we're 5 minutes past scheduled pushback." "I'm aware." "Then let's resolve this with minimal disruption." "That depends," Amara said, now meeting his gaze directly, "on whether you're trying to resolve it or suppress it." Captain Greene said nothing. Maya, still at the galley, dropped a spoon. The clink echoed too loud. Karen folded her arms. Amara glanced down at her phone. The call screen to Gregory Ward still glowed faintly. She hadn't pressed it yet, but she would. Amara stood tall, her posture unyielding as the air around her thickened with judgment and tension. The silence wasn't silent. It buzzed with whispers, stares, assumptions. The kind of silence that says more than words ever could. Captain Greene shifted his weight, clearly hoping this would resolve with the smoothness of a gate announcement. "Miss Cole," he said, a forced calm in his voice. "Let's be practical. I have a nearly full flight, and I need to get us airborne. Just take a seat in the main cabin, for now. We'll upgrade you on the next flight, reimburse you, whatever you want. Let's not make this bigger than it is." Amara's expression didn't change. Her grip on the leather handle of her bag tightened only slightly. "It's already bigger than you realize." The captain exhaled through his nose. "It's just a seat." "No," she said softly. "It's a statement." The passengers around them could feel the shift. Even those pretending not to watch, those hiding behind newspapers or earbuds or half-open laptops, couldn't help but glance up again, because something was happening. Something real. From behind Amara, a voice broke the stillness. "Seriously?" a woman muttered, not quite a whisper. "This is what people do now? Start drama just to go viral?" Amara didn't turn, but she heard it. The woman, mid-40s, designer sunglasses perched on her head, was leaning toward her husband. Her voice not low enough. "Probably some influencer stunt," she added. "It's always the same formula." Another passenger nodded in agreement. Amara took a breath. Not deep, not dramatic. Just enough to steel herself. Then she looked back at Captain Greene. "I'm not moving," she said, her voice sharper now. cold and clear like crystal. I'm not here for miles or upgrades or to go viral. I didn't come for comfort. The captain raised a brow. Then what exactly did you come for, Miss Cole? And here it was. The twist. Amara's gaze locked with his. I came for justice, not peace, not quiet, not convenience. Justice. For the first time, something flickered in the captain's eyes. A crack in the professionalism. A moment of human discomfort. He glanced at Karen, whose arms were now folded so tightly across her chest it looked painful. You're delaying a federal flight, Karen hissed quietly. That's a crime. Amara turned to her. So is discrimination, but I don't see anyone arresting you. The heat of her words dropped like a match into a room full of gas. Karen's cheeks flushed, but she didn't speak. A few seats back, Daniel Cruz watched the scene with sharpened focus. He wasn't just recording with his memory anymore. His phone was back in his hand. This time, not discreet, purposeful. He leaned into the aisle slightly and said loud enough for those around to hear, Miss Cole is right. There's been no disturbance except for how she's being treated. The tension rose another notch. The woman with the sunglasses rolled her eyes and whispered, So now everyone's a social justice hero? Someone in the back snorted a laugh. Karen seemed to draw energy from the distraction and turned back to Amara. You're creating an unsafe environment for our passengers. That did it. Amara took a single step forward. She wasn't angry, not visibly, but there was power in her voice now, the kind that makes walls crack. I'm not creating anything, she said. I boarded this flight, quietly, respectfully, with a valid boarding pass. You made me a spectacle. You called my name out like I was a suspect. You implied fraud, with no reason. You invited this moment. Captain Greene held up his hand again, but Amara didn't stop. You've embarrassed me, publicly. You've questioned my presence, my legitimacy, my integrity, all based on what? My hoodie? My skin? The air grew heavier. Daniel slowly set his phone on the tray table and spoke again. She has every right to that seat. I've seen this flight crew before. I've flown this route for years, and I've seen enough to know when something's off. Karen's head snapped toward him. Sir, we are handling this. You're not, he replied evenly. You're escalating it. Another voice, a younger one, joined in. It's just wrong. Everyone turned. It was the teenage girl who'd peeked from the aisle earlier. She was holding her mother's hand now, whispering something, her expression unsure but defiant. Amara turned slowly and looked at the captain one more time. I will not be moved, she said. I will not be silenced. I will not be shuffled into the background because it's more convenient for you. Captain Greene was pale now. He rubbed the back of his neck and looked at Karen. Give her back the seat. Karen stared, stunned. Captain, give her the damn seat. The word damn echoed like a crack. Karen hesitated, then, reluctantly, walked over to the galley and pulled a tablet from the wall. She tapped a few buttons. Her hands were shaking. Amara didn't sit yet. She turned toward the rest of the cabin. She wasn't here to make a speech, but silence wasn't safety anymore. I didn't ask for this moment, she said quietly, but now that it's here, I won't waste it. And then, only then, she sat. Seat 2A welcomed her like a throne finally returned. The hush in the cabin wasn't just awkward anymore. It was electric. The seat beneath Amara felt solid, soft leather and polished wood. But the weight pressing against her back wasn't from the furniture. It was the gravity of every eye locked onto her. She could feel the stares, the mutters, the unspoken calculations being made by every passenger. Karen stood stiffly near the galley, her jaw set in defiant lines. Captain Greene had disappeared back into the cockpit, likely trying to manage the growing storm with silence and inertia. Amara had no such luxury. She pulled out her phone again, scrolled to the contact labeled simply GW, and tapped the call button. She placed the device on her tray table, pressed speaker, and folded her hands calmly in her lap. 1 ring, 2 rings. The tension in the cabin surged, as if the walls themselves were leaning in to listen. Click. "This is Gregory Ward," a sharp, clipped voice answered. "Who's calling?" Amara spoke evenly. "Gregory, it's Amara Cole." A pause. Then, "I'm sorry." "Who?" Twist. "Amara Cole," she repeated, louder now, her voice firm. "Daughter of Mason Cole." Another beat of silence. Then the voice transformed, from executive to startled human. "Amara? Oh my God, Amara, I wasn't expecting… Are you okay? Is something wrong?" Every passenger within earshot froze. Amara didn't change expression. "I'm on flight 227, seat 2A, or at least I was." Gregory's tone turned urgent. "What's happened?" She didn't need to embellish. "The lead flight attendant attempted to remove me from my seat. She implied I had boarded improperly, despite a valid first-class boarding pass scanned 3 times. Gregory's voice flattened with fury. "What?" "She called it a duplicate. She said I didn't look like I belonged here. The captain tried to move me to economy temporarily." Gasps rippled through the rows behind her. A man in 2B shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Daniel Cruz tapped his phone screen again, no longer recording, just staring at the live call as if it were a courtroom feed. Gregory's next words sliced through the speaker like a whip. "Put the captain on, now." Amara reached into the aisle and waved her hand, motioning toward the cockpit door. Karen didn't move. "Captain Greene?" Amara said calmly, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're wanted on the phone. It's Gregory Ward." A full 10 seconds passed before the cockpit door clicked open. Captain Greene emerged, expression strained, and made his way down the aisle like a soldier approaching judgment. He reached Amara's row, and she handed him the phone without a word. "Mr. Ward, sir," he said, voice low and cautious. "Captain," Gregory's voice now filled the cabin. "Do you have any idea who you attempted to remove from first class?" There was a pause. Captain Greene hesitated. "Sir, there was a seating discrepancy." "There was no discrepancy," Gregory snapped. "You tried to displace Amara Cole, the daughter of Mason Cole, the sole inheritor of the founding stake in this company, the largest individual shareholder of North Wing Airlines." The air itself recoiled. Even the hum of the engine seemed to quiet. Passengers gasped audibly. The woman who had muttered about influencers visibly shrank into her seat. Karen's eyes widened as the words landed like thunder in a vacuum. Gregory wasn't done. "She was flying under discretion at my request as a courtesy to her family during a time of grief. And you attempted to publicly humiliate her, Captain." Greene stammered. "I wasn't aware, sir. The crew didn't know, nah." "That's the problem, Mitchell. You didn't ask. You assumed. And you tried to eject her from a seat she owns." The captain's face went pale. Gregory's voice softened, dangerously. "Hand the phone back to her." Greene did, almost trembling. Amara took it without triumph, only steadiness. "Amara," Gregory said, his tone gentler now. "I am so sorry, so deeply sorry. This will be corrected." She nodded once, though he couldn't see her. "I'm still in the seat, but I need more than apologies." "I understand," he replied. "I'll handle the crew, and I'll see you personally in New York. Anything you need between now and then, it's yours." "I need Karen Dawson removed from this flight," Amara said clearly. "Before takeoff." Another silence, but this one wasn't hesitant. It was final. Gregory exhaled. "Done." She hung up. Captain Greene didn't argue. He turned toward Karen. "Pack your things," he said flatly. "You're off this flight." Karen sputtered. "But Captain, she… No, no more," Greene snapped, louder than anything he'd said all flight. "You've embarrassed the company, you've humiliated a board member, and you've jeopardized the entire operation. Get your bag." Karen's eyes darted across the cabin, but no one met her gaze. Maya, the junior attendant, kept her eyes down. Daniel watched silently, dispassionately. Even the woman with sunglasses turned away, cheeks flushed. Karen moved slowly, pulling her small overnight bag from the galley and walking the aisle she once patrolled like a queen. Her footsteps echoed as she passed Amara. For a brief second, their eyes met. No gloating, no rage, just a mirror, showing Karen everything she had refused to see about herself. And then, she was gone. The cabin remained silent as the door shut behind her. Captain Greene straightened his jacket, cleared his throat, and faced Amara. "Miss Cole, my deepest apologies. I will personally oversee the rest of your flight." Amara nodded once. He turned to the other passengers. "Thank you all for your patience. We will be pushing back shortly." He disappeared again into the cockpit. The buzz returned. The whispers, the shocked expression, the silent recalibrations of who they thought Amara was. She leaned back in seat 2A, not as a victor, not as a villain, as someone reclaiming her place. As the hum of the engines returned and the cabin settled from the storm, a stillness remained around seat 2A, but it was no longer born of judgment. It was the hush of awe, of confusion, of quiet recalibration. Amara Cole didn't shift in her seat. She reached into the front pocket of her leather portfolio and slowly drew out a thick envelope secured with a wax seal bearing the North Wing insignia. Every motion was deliberate. Every second she moved felt like the unfolding of a trial, not just for Karen, but for the entire idea of who gets to belong. She laid the envelope on her tray table and peeled back the seal. From inside, she removed a series of documents, formal, printed on heavy linen paper, stamped with multiple signatures and embossed logos. The first page bore the header, North Wing Aviation Board of Directors. Official Shareholder Declaration. Class A Control Shares. Beneath that, her name. Full, in bold. Amara Lynn Cole. She flipped to the second document. It was her formal appointment as a voting board member, dated 2 weeks prior and signed by all remaining executives. But it was the third page that gave her pause. It was handwritten, a note she had never seen until that moment. In her father's unmistakable script, Amara is to fly unannounced, unaccompanied, and unrecognized unless the system fails her. If it does, she is to reveal everything. She stared at the line, as if it had just burned itself into the page before her eyes. The ink bled slightly into the paper, not from age, but from the emotional weight it carried. Her father had known. He had known something like this could happen, had feared it, had planned for it. Amara exhaled, not with relief, with realization. This wasn't just a moment of reclaiming a seat. It was an echo of his warning, ringing louder now than ever before. She stacked the pages neatly and held them out as Captain Greene returned, pale and visibly shaken. The other attendants had begun preparing for pushback, moving stiffly and without the usual grace. "I thought you should see this," Amara said, her voice steady, offering the documents. Greene took them in both hands like sacred text. He scanned the top page, then the second, then paused on the handwritten note. His brow furrowed deeply. His lips pressed together in a tight, humbled line. "Your father," he said, almost reverently. "He was a brilliant man." "Yes," Amara said, "and he saw this coming." Greene's throat moved as he swallowed. The cabin was so quiet that the beeping from the cockpit sounded like church bells. From behind them, someone coughed. Then someone else whispered, "She owns the airline." Amara didn't respond. She simply sat back in her seat and let the silence do what it needed to. Just then, the aircraft door reopened briefly. A ground agent stepped in, nodded to Captain Greene, then left. Karen had officially been removed from the flight manifest. Her name, her ID badge, her access, all terminated before the plane had even left the tarmac. But the moment wasn't over. As if summoned by invisible fury, Karen suddenly reappeared at the threshold of the cabin, being escorted backward by a uniformed airport security officer. Her face was twisted in disbelief. "This is insane," she barked, her voice hoarse. "You're firing me? Over this?" The passengers froze again. I followed procedure. I checked her ticket. There was a discrepancy in the system. Captain Greene stepped forward. Karen, enough! No, she screamed, tears brimming at the edges of her mascara. This was a setup, a corporate stunt, a media trap. You don't just happen to be on a plane with a recording lawyer and the founder's daughter with a hidden camera and a secret file. You think I don't see what this is? Daniel Cruz leaned forward slightly in his seat. No one needed a trap. You walked into it yourself. Karen's eyes shot toward him, wild and unmoored. This is a witch hunt, she cried. I was protecting the brand. You should be thanking me. Amara turned slowly in her seat to face her. Karen, she said, you weren't protecting the brand. You were protecting your power, and you misused it. Karen pointed a trembling finger. You think because you have a last name and some fancy papers, you can just walk in here and tear everything down? I don't need to tear anything down, Amara replied. You're doing that yourself. The security officer touched Karen's elbow gently, urging her back toward the gate. Her final words echoed through the cabin like the wail of a siren. This is a war, and I'm not the only one who thinks so. Then she was gone. The door sealed shut again. Captain Greene, still holding the shareholder documents, looked at Amara. I'll return these to you if you'd like. No, she said. Hold on to them. You'll need them for your report. He nodded and walked back toward the cockpit. As the aircraft finally pushed back from the gate, a single hand reached across the aisle. Daniel Cruz. He extended it with a quiet, professional grace. Ms. Cole, he said. That was astonishing. She looked at him for a moment, then shook his hand. Call me Amara, she replied. He smiled. Daniel. As the wheels lifted off the runway, Amara looked out the window, her reflection overlapping the clouds. In the space between sky and silence, she heard her father's voice, not in memory, but in certainty. Systems fail. That's why you build new ones. The aircraft cruised steadily at 36,000 feet, slicing through the dusk sky with practiced precision. But inside the first-class cabin of Flight 227, the atmosphere remained unsteady, not from turbulence, but from truth. No one said a word to Amara Cole, not the man in the tailored Navy suit across the aisle who had glared when she first boarded, not the couple with matching watches who had whispered about influencers, not even the attendant with the platinum hair who had earlier been offering champagne like it was holy water. Everyone had seen the exchange. Everyone had heard the call. Now, the silence wasn't one of doubt. It was one of deference, of fear, of reevaluation. Amara didn't care for any of it. She sat in 2A, arms crossed loosely, eyes closed, head tilted slightly to the side as though resting, but she wasn't sleeping. Her mind was racing, not from adrenaline, but from purpose. Her father had warned her, not with dramatic speeches, but with quiet, deliberate habits. The strongest systems rot from the inside first, he once said, when she was 15 and complaining about a broken school policy. Don't just fix the problem, find the source. And now, she was beginning to sense the rot. Karen Dawson was not the source. She was the symptom. A soft knock on the divider brought her back. She opened her eyes to see a young woman standing at the edge of her seat. Late 20s maybe, with chestnut brown curls tucked under a neat flight attendant's cap. Her posture was careful, but her hands were visibly trembling. I'm sorry to interrupt, she said quietly. Miss Cole, may I have a moment? Amara nodded. The woman stepped forward and crouched slightly beside the seat, lowering her voice. My name's Leah. I'm one of the junior attendants on this crew. I wanted to say I'm sorry, truly, for what happened back there. Amara regarded her gently. Thank you, Leah. Leah's lip quivered. She inhaled once, shakily, as if trying to keep her composure, but then the tears came. She turned her face away, covering her mouth, trying not to sob. Amara reached for the tissue tucked beside her water glass and handed it over without a word. I'm sorry, Leah choked, wiping her eyes. I have watched her do it to so many people, not just passengers, staff, New hires. Anyone who looked like they didn't fit. Amara didn't respond. She let the silence create space. I was pregnant 2 years ago, Leah continued, voice barely above a whisper. First trimester. Still early. I hadn't told anyone yet, just my husband. I was scheduled on a long-haul flight with Karen. She was in one of her moods. She made me work back-to-back beverage services even after I said I felt dizzy. Wouldn't let me rest, said I was being dramatic. Amara's breath caught, but she didn't interrupt. I miscarried 2 days later, Leah whispered. She never said sorry, just told me I'd be off the roster for a week and to get emotionally fit before returning. A long silence settled between them. I filed an internal wellness complaint, Leah added. HR said there was no evidence, that her record was clean, and after that, she made my life a living hell for 6 months. Swapped my schedules, blocked my promotion, blacklisted me from leadership tracks. I was just a flight attendant again. Nothing more. Amara spoke softly. Why didn't you go public or escalate it to corporate? Leah hesitated. Then came twist 5. The part that didn't fit the narrative, but explained everything. Because Karen wasn't acting alone, she said. There's someone behind her. Amara leaned forward slightly. Who? Leah looked around. Her voice dropped even lower. We don't know his name. Just, people call him the Fixer. He's in operations, or security, or maybe legal. No one's sure. But Karen bragged once, after a delay where she yelled at the tower staff, that she'd never be touched. That he's the reason I'm still untouchable. Amara blinked. Leah nodded, eyes wide with fear. Whenever someone files a complaint about her, especially if it's serious, it disappears, gets buried, no record. One girl had audio of Karen screaming racial slurs at a gate agent in Miami. She submitted it. The file vanished. The agent got transferred to cargo. Karen got a bonus. Amara felt her stomach turn. So you're telling me, she said slowly, there's a system protecting people like her, not just a person. Yes, Leah said. It's deeper than her. I think your dad knew. That's why he tried to restructure HR 2 years ago. Karen hated him for it, said he was trying to ruin everything. That's the word she used. Everything. Everything. Amara sat back. The seat felt suddenly colder. Her father had tried to change the system, and something had stopped him. Or someone. Karen had just been the visible part of the iceberg. Thank you for telling me, Amara said at last. I know that wasn't easy. Leah stood. It's just, when I saw you walk on, and she did what she always does, I thought, she doesn't know who she's messing with this time. But then I was afraid again. Because what if you didn't know who she was, either? Amara's expression was unreadable. I know now. Leah wiped her face. Let me know if you need anything. I mean it. As Leah stepped away, Amara looked out the window. The sun was beginning to set, a blaze of orange streaking the clouds. Her heart was heavy, but her mind was clear. This wasn't about Karen anymore. It wasn't about a seat or a smirk, or even a public humiliation. It was about a network of quiet power, invisible hands protecting invisible lines, ones her father had failed to cut. Now, it was her turn. She reached into her bag and pulled out a slim black notebook. On the first page, she wrote 3 words. Find the Fixer. By the time Flight 227 touched down at JFK, the story was already viral. It started as a leaked cell phone video. Grainy, shot from an awkward angle in first class. It showed Karen Dawson hovering above a young black woman in a hoodie, her tone sharp, posture rigid. It captured only snippets of the exchange. This seat is not for you, and I'll need to verify again. Followed by murmurs of disbelief and a calm, cold voice responding with unwavering authority. Then came the audio, clear and unmistakable. The speakerphone call to Gregory Ward. The moment the name Amara Cole dropped like a bomb across the cabin. Within hours, the footage was clipped, re-uploaded, captioned, dissected, and reposted across every platform. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube. News outlets picked it up, each with their own headlines. Airline exec's daughter humiliated in first class. Board member or buddy pass. Viral video sparks class war. The Seat 2A scandal. Who is Amara Cole? And then the real war began. The comment sections turned into battlegrounds. On one side, those who cheered Amara's composure, her refusal to be dismissed, her quiet strength in the face of casual cruelty. This is why representation matters. She didn't scream, she didn't beg, she just called her CEO. That's what generational legacy looks like. Karma served cold in corporate. I love it. On the other side, the cynics, the skeptics, the defenders of procedure. Why was she flying anonymously? Sounds like a setup. You can't just pull rank because someone questioned you. Karen probably thought she was protecting the airline. Now she's the scapegoat. Some twisted the story into something else entirely. This isn't about racism. It's about elites abusing power. Another rich kid playing victim. Would she care if it happened to someone without a famous last name? Amara read none of it. But the pings on her phone didn't stop. Journalists, producers, former classmates, estranged cousins, even ex-boyfriends, all suddenly had something to say. Everyone wanted a quote, a soundbite, a seat at the table of her sudden fame. She wanted none of it. In the black SUV that whisked her from the airport to the hotel, Amara kept her gaze fixed outside. The New York skyline loomed like a wall of mirrors, reflecting everything and hiding even more. Next to her, Gregory Ward sat silently, his phone turned face down. His usual confidence, the booming boardroom voice, the charming smirk, was gone. He looked tired and old. For the first time, Amara saw how much her father's absence weighed on him. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "You've already said that," she replied. He nodded. "Then I'll say it again. You didn't deserve what happened." "No," Amara said, "but I was prepared for it." He turned to look at her. "Your father would be proud." Amara didn't answer. She wasn't sure if that mattered anymore. At the hotel, a folder awaited her at the front desk. Inside, a printed copy of the New York Ledger's Sunday Investigative Spotlight, the most prestigious and feared investigative column in the industry. The title read, "Who Tried to Silence Mason Cole?" Her chest tightened. The article was long, meticulous, and heavily sourced. It detailed how, 2 years prior, Mason Cole had attempted to restructure North Wing's Internal Accountability Division, including terminating several senior staff accused of repeated ethical violations. One of those names? Karen Dawson. According to the article, Mason had submitted a formal recommendation for her removal after 3 substantiated complaints, one involving a disabled passenger, another involving a junior flight crew member who quit mid-flight citing emotional abuse. The twist came halfway through, a paragraph that stopped Amara's breath. Internal emails reviewed by the Ledger show that Mr. Cole's recommendation was overruled by the board's ethics subcommittee, led at the time by an anonymous director. The memo read in part, "Given her years of service and critical role in long-haul crew coordination, it is inadvisable to remove Ms. Dawson at this juncture. Let the matter rest." An anonymous director, a hidden hand, a shield behind the curtain. Her father had tried to clean house, and someone powerful, had blocked him. And worse, that someone was still on the board. The thought was ice in her veins. For a long time, Amara stared out the window of her suite, high above the city. The world below didn't know that Karen wasn't the story, that her arrogance and prejudice were just the front page, not the fine print. This wasn't about one woman's abuse of power. It was about the system that protected her, a system her father had helped build, and ultimately had been betrayed by. Gregory had said he'd be proud, but Amara wasn't so sure. What if, at the end of his life, he hadn't felt proud at all? What if he had felt helpless, tied up by the very institution he gave everything to? She remembered the handwritten note in the folder. Reveal everything, only if the system fails her. The system hadn't just failed her. It had failed him. And now, it was her move. Karen Dawson had always known how to perform. 22 years in the air had taught her the power of posture, the impact of a lowered voice, the effectiveness of a tear at the corner of the eye. So when she found herself sitting across from attorney Martin Lane in a glass-walled office downtown, she wasn't begging for help. She was crafting a narrative. "I gave my life to that airline," she said, voice raw but steady. "And they threw me out like garbage because of a misunderstanding." Lane, mid-40s, flashy suit, whiter than white teeth, and a reputation for loving the camera more than the courtroom, leaned forward, hands steepled. "This isn't just wrongful termination," he said. "This is class warfare." Karen blinked. "Class?" He nodded. "You. Loyal, hardworking. Them, billionaires. Legacy hires, protected elites. This is David versus Goliath, and we're gonna make sure people see it that way." She swallowed. "So, you think I can win?" "No," he said, grinning. "But you can become famous enough to make it feel like you did." Thus began the campaign. Hashtags sprouted overnight. #justice for Karen, #flight attendant rights, #anti-class discrimination. The strategy wasn't subtle. It wasn't meant to be. Lane's PR team pushed a curated version of events to sympathetic influencers, tabloid reporters, and fringe political commentators. The headlines shifted. Veteran worker fired for asking questions. Airline caves to woke mob. Sacrifices loyal employee. Elite heiress humiliates employee for doing her job. And then came the twist that shook the narrative to its core. Twist 7, the clip. A 41-second video surfaced, grainy but audible, allegedly recorded 2 years earlier during a closed-door team meeting. In the video, Mason Cole, Amara's father, stood at the head of a conference table, voice raised. "You were told to implement the policy change. You didn't. That's not a misunderstanding. That's insubordination. Do you think this company runs on feelings? No, it runs on precision, on excellence. If that's too much for you, there are doors on every floor." His face was red, his tone harsh. The camera shook slightly, clearly held by someone hiding it. The caption that accompanied the leak read, "This was the man behind the empire. This is the legacy Amara Cole inherited." Within hours, the clip was everywhere. Talk shows dissected it. Panels debated it. A prominent columnist declared, "Mason Cole preached justice but practiced tyranny." Suddenly, Amara's carefully cultivated image of calm, principled leadership began to unravel. Like father, like daughter. She talks about justice, but she's just another rich girl enforcing daddy's rules. Power doesn't skip generations. Amara woke up to find her inbox flooded, her phone buzzing with requests for comments, apologies, explanations. She said nothing, at first, but the silence was quickly filled by others. A former pilot surfaced on a podcast. Mason was a genius, no doubt, but he could be cold, ruthless. A union rep claimed Mason tried to gut worker protections in 2019, though no record supported the statement. And through it all, Karen played the victim. She appeared on the People's Megaphone, a sensationalist online talk show with millions of subscribers. She wore a beige cardigan, minimal makeup, and held a tissue throughout the segment. "I never wanted this fight," she said, her voice trembling. "I just asked a question. I followed protocol, and now I'm the villain? Because I stood up to power?" The host leaned in, delighted. "You stood up to a dynasty." Karen nodded. "And they crushed me." Cue tears. Cue applause. The public split down the middle again. Those who had hailed Amara as a symbol of composure now began to second guess. She never really addressed what happened. Why doesn't she talk to the media? What is she hiding? If her father was that cruel, maybe she is too. And then came the labels. Privileged, elitist, spoiled executive in disguise. The very hoodie that had once made Amara relatable now became a costume, a symbol of false humility. Online threads popped up analyzing her clothes, her tone, her silence. She's no underdog, she's corporate royalty. Amara watched it all from her hotel room window. 13 floors above the city that now seemed to turn on a dime. She didn't cry, she didn't rage, but she did feel it. The erosion of trust, the poison of doubt, the slow burning question crawling into her mind. Was she really the symbol of change, or just the next iteration of power? The campaign against her wasn't random. It was organized, orchestrated, and it had resources, access, footage that shouldn't have existed, which meant one thing: someone on the inside, someone close to the top, wanted her out of the spotlight. The fixer? Or worse, someone even higher. Karen might have been loud, but whoever released that clip of her father, they were quiet, strategic, patient. Her father once told her, "Loud enemies are easy. It's the quiet ones who draw the real blood." Amara stood from the window and walked to her desk. On the black notebook from the plane, beneath "Find the Fixer," she added a second line, "Follow the leak." This wasn't about her image anymore. It was about truth. And war had just been declared, while the internet spun stories and headlines clashed like titans. Daniel Cruz sat quietly in his apartment in Brooklyn, reviewing footage frame by frame. He hadn't spoken to Amara since the flight, hadn't reached out, hadn't chased a spotlight. That wasn't his way. But as a litigation attorney and former assistant U.S. prosecutor, he knew a smear campaign when he saw one. And what he saw unfolding online wasn't journalism. It was a hit job. He'd been there. Seat 3B. He'd watched Karen Dawson berate a calm, composed woman who said nothing inflammatory, nothing disrespectful, and everything justified. He'd recorded much of it, not for views, but for evidence. Now, it was time to act. Daniel wrote a 2,300-word guest essay for the New York Times, submitted through a colleague on the editorial board. It was approved within a day. The title, "I Was on That Flight. Here's What Actually Happened." In the piece, Daniel detailed the timeline of events, without flourish or exaggeration. He described Karen's tone, her insistence, her escalation. He described Amara's restraint, her quiet power, the moment she made the phone call that silenced a cabin. And then he addressed the heart of the issue. This was not a case of misunderstanding. This was not protocol. This was implicit bias dressed in professionalism. And it nearly cost a woman her dignity, had she not had the means and the voice to push back. He ended with a warning. We don't need more performative apologies. We need accountability. And not just for those who yell, but for the systems that whisper in their favor. But Daniel didn't stop at words. The next day, he released the full uncut video, from the moment Amara stepped onto the plane to the moment Karen was escorted off. 43 minutes of raw, uninterrupted truth. No captions, no edits, just context. It was damning, and it changed everything. The narrative shifted overnight. Even the skeptical voices, the ones who had called Amara a privileged heiress, a fake activist, a media manipulator, went quiet as they watched the footage, watched Karen's repeated demands, her microaggressions masked as due diligence, her smirks, her tone. They watched Amara stand her ground, without raising her voice once. Comment sections flipped. "Okay, I was wrong. This is straight up discrimination. Watching this makes me sick." She kept her composure while being humiliated. How did anyone defend Karen after this? But the biggest twist came not from a lawyer or a writer, but from a man who had once been invisible. Twist 8. The Janitor Speaks. His name was Malcolm Reed, 62 years old, maintenance staff at North Wing for 19 years. He had seen everything and been seen by no one. Until now. He posted a short video to his private Facebook account, which was shared by his niece and quickly went viral. In the video, Malcolm sat at a modest kitchen table. wearing a faded north wing cap. His eyes were tired but steady. "I've worked for this company longer than most of the execs," he said. "And I've been called a lot of things over the years, but only one person ever called me a monkey." He paused. "It was Karen Dawson, 5 years ago, after I accidentally knocked over a cart while she was loading for a flight to Lisbon." He swallowed. "I filed a complaint. Thought that's what you were supposed to do. HR said they'd look into it. A week later, my shift got cut in half. My supervisor stopped talking to me, and 2 months later, my report disappeared." He looked into the camera. "She's not a scapegoat. She's not a victim. She's just finally facing what she thought she'd buried." The video tore through the internet like wildfire. By the afternoon, #IStandWithAmara was trending worldwide. By evening, GoFundMe suspended Karen Dawson's legal fund, citing misrepresentation of key facts and new verified testimony. By nightfall, Karen's social media accounts were locked, and her PR firm dropped her as a client. The world hadn't just turned on her. It had rejected her. Daniel watched the fallout unfold from his office, but he didn't celebrate. He didn't cheer. He didn't gloat. He simply closed his laptop and made one call. To Amara. She answered on the second ring. "I saw the essay," she said before he could speak. "And the video?" I didn't know you had that much." "I waited," Daniel replied, "to see if truth would matter on its own, but the silence was growing louder." There was a pause. Then Amara said softly, "Thank you. You don't owe me thanks. You owe yourself peace." "I don't think that's coming soon," she said. "Not yet." "Then take purpose instead," Daniel said, "and build from there." Amara didn't cry, but for the first time since the flight, she allowed herself to close her eyes and breathe. Not because the war was over, but because someone had reminded the world what truth looked like, unfiltered, unpolished, and alive. The mahogany-paneled boardroom of North Wing headquarters was designed to project authority. High ceilings, arched windows, glass water pitchers lined with precision. But when Amara Cole stepped inside, the room felt colder than the February wind howling outside. 12 men, 1 woman, all older, all in tailored suits, all seated in the same positions her father used to address them from. None stood to greet her. Gregory Ward, seated at the far end, gave her a small nod. It wasn't encouragement. It was caution. Amara took the seat left empty at the center, the one once occupied by Mason Cole, and opened her leather folder. Silence. It was her first official board meeting since the incident, since the video, since the viral chaos, the think pieces, the televised panels, the lawsuits, the takedowns. And though much of the world had rallied behind her, here, in this room, she could feel the difference. They hadn't forgiven her, not because she'd done something wrong, but because she'd done something loud. And power, in these halls, preferred its victories quiet. Gregory cleared his throat. "Let's begin with item 1, operations audit for Q4. They moved through the early agenda quickly, brushing past reports, forecasts, damage control strategies. No one addressed the scandal directly. No one even said the word Karen. It wasn't until item 6, board structure and public response review, that the gloves came off. A man named Carter Bell, VP of International Partnerships and one of the oldest members present, leaned forward and folded his hands neatly. "Before we proceed," he said, his voice low but sharp, "I'd like to raise a procedural consideration." Gregory stiffened. Amara tilted her head slightly. Bell continued, eyes on no one but her. "Given the current climate surrounding recent events and the intense media spotlight directed at this board, I propose we consider whether it might be prudent for Director Cole to take a temporary leave of absence." Silence. Even Gregory didn't speak. Bell went on. "This is not a question of competence or inheritance, but our brand is in a fragile place. There's still unrest, headlines, troll campaigns, lawsuits pending. Her presence at this time may complicate rather than clarify our direction." Twist 9. There it was, the polite betrayal, the quiet exile dressed as professionalism. Amara didn't flinch. She let the silence stretch, letting each member feel the weight of the words Belle had just laid on the table. Then she opened her folder and pulled out a set of printed proposals, thick, bound, numbered. "I anticipated this," she said coolly, "and I'll make my answer clear. No, I will not be stepping back." Belle raised an eyebrow. "With all due respect." "With all due respect," Amara interrupted, her voice steel behind velvet. "You don't get to ask me to clean the blood off the floor and then leave the room before the mop dries." Several members shifted in their seats. Amara slid a copy of the document to each member. "What you're holding is a multi-pronged reform package. It includes 4 critical initiatives, all built not from theory, but from the wreckage we just experienced, and from my father's unfinished work." She pointed to the first section. 1. The Mason Cole Legacy Scholarship, a $10 million endowment seeded this year, matched annually, to fund education in aviation, engineering, business leadership for underrepresented communities. She flipped to the second. 2. Mentorship Mandate. Every executive director, VP and above will be assigned 2 mentees annually, 1 internal, 1 external, tracked by outcomes and published in our quarterly transparency reports. Belle scoffed slightly. "Forced mentoring isn't a reform. It's HR fluff." Amara didn't blink. "Then you'll appreciate Section 3. She tapped it. "Comprehensive internal ethics audit, conducted by a third-party DEI firm, including whistleblower protection measures, employee interviews, and a 5-year backward investigation into complaint suppression patterns." That got attention. One director shifted. Another pursed his lips. Amara looked around. "This is not just about Karen Dawson. She wasn't an outlier. She was enabled, protected, shielded by mechanisms designed to bury truth." Her voice grew firmer. "I am not here to ask for permission. I am a voting board member, and unless I am forcibly removed, which I assure you will go public in a very ugly way, I will continue to sit in this seat and hold this company to the values my father intended." She let the silence return, but this time, it wasn't cold. It was consideration, because behind their discomfort, behind their calculated glances and corporate inertia, was one truth they couldn't ignore. The world was watching. Daniel's article, Malcolm's video, the waves of public support, the scrutiny, the press. Northwing didn't just have an internal problem, it had a reputation on the line. And Amara had the public behind her now. Gregory finally spoke. "I've reviewed the proposal," he said. "It's aggressive, but it's also necessary. We can't afford another scandal. And we certainly can't afford to look like we punished the one person who did the right thing." Belle looked like he'd swallowed a tack. Amara turned toward him. "If you want me gone, vote. But understand, I won't go quietly. I'll speak. And this company will burn in the court of public opinion long before you find a replacement who can face it." No one voted. No one even motioned. The proposal passed unanimously. The silence that followed wasn't oppressive anymore. It was the sound of a new system being born. After the meeting, Gregory caught up to her in the hallway. "You did well in there." "I didn't come to do well," Amara replied. "I came to finish what my father started." Gregory hesitated. "You know this puts you in the crosshairs. The higher you rise, the harder they'll come after you." She turned, looked him in the eye. "Good," she said. "Let them try." The apartment reeked of bleach and cheap insulation. Karen Dawson sat on the edge of a stained mattress, staring at the wall where the paint had bubbled from water damage. The window overlooked a dumpster behind a laundromat, its hum masking the silence inside. It had been 6 months since she walked off that flight. 6 months since the cabin doors closed behind her like the gates of an invisible prison. 6 months since the ground dropped from under her life. The severance was gone. The savings? Burned through in legal retainers? rent deposits, and panic-fueled purchases, as if designer heels could anchor her dignity. The GoFundMe? Pulled down. The donations refunded. The public sympathy evaporated in the face of truth and evidence. Karen now worked the night shift cleaning offices in Midtown, vacuuming beneath the desks of executives who probably took the same flights she once commanded, who once drank wine she poured with a polished smile. Now she emptied their trash. The job wasn't unionized. The pay was hourly. No one said ma'am to her anymore. They barely said anything at all. She moved like a ghost, seen only in reflections, never acknowledged. That night, during her 2:30 a.m. break, Karen sat in the building's service stairwell, chewing on a stale granola bar, scrolling through her cracked phone. She tapped her browser and refreshed the only article she hadn't deleted. North Wing Board approves historic equity reform under Amara Cole. The headline made her stomach twist. There it was. Amara's face, poised behind a podium, not a hair out of place, smiling like the whole world had finally bowed. Karen's thumb hovered over the screen. She should have hated her, but in this moment, hate felt hollow, useless. What was the point of hating someone when you couldn't even afford to dry clean your interview blouse? She sighed and tossed the phone into her bag. At that moment, it buzzed. An email alert. Karen retrieved the phone and opened the message. Subject: termination of representation, Lane Law Firm. The body was short and cold. Dear Ms. Dawson, due to irreconcilable reputational conflicts, we are terminating our legal representation of your interests, effective immediately. We wish you the best in future endeavors. Martin Lane. She blinked. Twist 10. Martin Lane, the same man who had built her defense, who had declared war on Amara's name, who had stood beside her on morning shows with practiced outrage, had dropped her. And not just dropped her. An hour later, another article landed in her feed. Martin Lane joins Air as head of public image crisis strategy. Air, North Wing's biggest competitor. A bold, aggressive, controversial airline known for pushing boundaries and profiting off public scandals. Karen stared at the screen in disbelief, not because she couldn't believe he left, but because she realized he'd never been on her side. She had been a tool, a launch pad. He saw a story, wrote it as far as it would go, and when it crashed, he parachuted out. Alone in the stairwell, Karen felt something inside her fracture, not like glass, but like ice under pressure. It didn't make her cry. She was beyond that. It just made her quiet, truly, deeply, irrevocably quiet. Across the city, Amara Cole sat in her father's old office. She had cleared the bookshelves of plaques and replaced them with framed photos, scholarship recipients, mentoring sessions, boardroom signatures from her reform vote. She kept one picture of Mason, him in a North Wing windbreaker, smiling beside the first test aircraft they'd built together. She looked at it now, trying to find the joy in it, but joy didn't come, just clarity. Daniel Cruz knocked on the glass door. "You've been in here 2 hours." "I needed space," Amara replied without turning around. He walked in anyway. "You're allowed to feel something, you know." "I do feel," she said softly. "I just don't know what." He sat across from her. "You won. The board, the public, the policies, the truth." She nodded. "I know. So why do you look like you lost?" Amara stared at her reflection in the window. "Because I realized something. Justice feels clean when you imagine it, but living it, it's messy. It doesn't come with applause, and it doesn't bring back what you thought you'd restore." Daniel leaned forward. "You're not your father." "I know. You're better." Amara finally looked at him. "That's not the point." "Then what is?" She took a long breath. "The point is, I didn't want her ruined. Karen, she deserved consequences. Yes. But this?" Amara shook her head. "No job, no friends. Betrayed by her own lawyer? I didn't ask for that." "You didn't have to. The system did it." "That's what scares me." Daniel sat back. "What now?" She looked at the photo again. Now I rebuild something that doesn't require someone's destruction to work. And in that moment, the burden of legacy didn't vanish, but it shifted from weight to purpose. The cabin lights glowed warm and soft as passengers filtered into the first-class section of Flight 227, now retrofitted with Northwing's latest design. Sleeker pods, personalized lighting, sustainability certifications on every surface. But for Amara Cole, the most familiar part of the cabin was still the seat she quietly settled into without fanfare. Seat 2A. 1 year had passed. A full year since the confrontation that started it all. Since the silence, the stares, the phone call, the fallout, the reform. The seat felt the same beneath her, firm, dignified. But she was not the same woman who had once clutched her portfolio like a shield. Now, her posture was relaxed. Her hair was pulled back in a braided bun, and her navy blazer bore a subtle Northwing pin above the lapel, not just as an executive, but as vice chair of the board. Across the cabin, crew members moved with coordinated ease, serving drinks and greeting passengers. The energy was different, lighter, warmer. And at the front of the cabin, stepping in from the cockpit after final checks, stood Leah. But Leah no longer wore the crisp navy of a flight attendant. Her suit was charcoal gray with a silver Northwing emblem embroidered on the chest, the uniform of a training and development officer. She spotted Amara instantly and smiled, crossing the cabin with practiced grace. "Miss Cole," she said warmly. Amara stood to hug her. "Officer Bennett now, is it?" Leah laughed, brushing her curls back. "Don't let the title fool you. I still know how to reset a jammed coffee machine faster than anyone." "You're glowing," Amara said. "I sleep now," Leah replied. "That helps." They both laughed, but their eyes shared something deeper, the memory of a flight neither of them would ever forget. "I saw the numbers," Leah said. 25 scholarship students this year." 25 and counting, Amara confirmed. "We're partnering with 2 flight academies next quarter. Most of the first cohort is in internships now. A few already logged flight hours. Your father would have been so proud." Amara nodded slowly. He always believed the cockpit wasn't a place, it was a perspective. He wanted anyone with vision to have access to that altitude. Leah's eyes sparkled. He passed that on, clearly. They chatted a few minutes longer before duty called Leah back to the front. Amara resumed her seat, gazing out the window as the plane began taxiing. And then, just as the aircraft eased into position, a soft voice beside her broke the silence. "Excuse me?" Amara turned. A girl, maybe 8 or 9, sat in 2B, swinging her feet slightly above the floor. Her hoodie was gray, oversized, the cuffs pulled down over her hands. A familiar style. She clutched a paperback in one hand, a worn boarding pass in the other. "Yes?" Amara asked gently. The girl blinked. "Are you famous or something?" Amara smiled. "Not really." "You look like someone I saw on YouTube. Something about a plane." Amara chuckled. "That sounds like me, yeah." The girl nodded thoughtfully. "You don't look famous. You look like my big cousin." "I'll take that as a compliment." They sat quietly for a moment, the engines humming beneath them. Then came the question, soft, genuine, and utterly disarming. "What do you do?" Amara looked at her, really looked. Brown skin, curious eyes. Hoodie zipped halfway, revealing a science camp shirt underneath. And in that face, she saw herself. Not the executive, not the headline, not even the woman who had faced Karen. Just the girl who once followed her father into hangars, asked too many questions, and believed that if she worked hard enough, there'd be a place for her too. So she leaned in, smiled, and said, "I help people like you find the seat where they belong." The girl beamed. "That's a cool job." "It is," Amara said. "Takes a lot of listening, and sometimes a lot of standing up when people want you to sit down." The girl giggled. "My teacher says I talk too much." "Then you're already qualified." As the plane lifted into the sky, The clouds broke open in soft pinks and golds, casting warm light across Amara's tray table. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. This one not heavy with legal papers, but with applications. Letters from scholarship students, notes from young women in STEM, plans for her next initiative, a mentorship pipeline connecting executives to first-generation college students. She glanced back at the girl beside her, who had returned to her book, and in that moment, everything clicked. Her father had built engines. She was building elevation, not just of aircraft, but of people, of voices, of belief. Seat 2A wasn't just where she sat. It was where her purpose lived. And now, it was where legacies took off.